The ships arrived on a Tuesday morning, gleaming like silver tears against Earth's blue sky. And humanity watched with wonder as the celestial harmonium made first contact with their species for 3 months. Everything seemed perfect. Diplomatic envoys from a dozen alien species walked through the halls of the United Nations building in Geneva. Translators worked overtime to bridge the gap between human languages and the melodic tones of the Vulcan. The crystalline chimes of the Zelenari and the deep resonances of the Korthax. Earth scientists marveled at anti-gravity technology, faster-than-light communications, and medical advances that could cure diseases humanity had fought for centuries. Ambassador Chan stood in the Grand Assembly Hall surrounded by holographic displays showing Earth's 12 colony worlds, each one a testament to human determination and hope. New Terra glowed brightest among them with its population of 10 billion souls, followed by Mars Colony, Europa Station, and 9 other worlds scattered across nearby star systems. The Zelenari representative, a being of living crystal named Zel-Karath, who held the title of Grand Arbiter, stood before the assembly and spoke with a voice like wind chimes. The celestial harmonium has existed for 10,000 years. Zel-Karath said, "We have brought peace to 1,000 species and prosperity to 10,000 worlds. The peace requires contribution. Prosperity demands participation." Ambassador Chun felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. "Your species must prove your commitment to galactic harmony." Zel-Karath continued, "You will transfer control of 12 colony worlds to the harmonium as tribute. Their populations will be relocated to serve the greater galactic community. This is how all new species demonstrate their loyalty." The assembly hall erupted in chaos. Delegates from every nation shouted at once, some in rage, others in disbelief. "You're asking us to hand over 12 billion people," Chun said, her voice cutting through the noise. "You're asking us to enslave our own colonies," Zel-Karath. Crystalline form shimmered with what might have been confusion or contempt. "Enslave is such an ugly word," the Grand Arbiter replied. "We prefer harmonious integration. Your people will serve the Empire as all species serve. They will work in our factories, maintain our stations, and contribute to galactic prosperity in return. Earth will receive technology and protection." "No," Chum said simply. The word hung in the air like a blade. "I beg your pardon?" Zel-Karath asked. "No," Chun repeated. "Humanity does not trade in the lives of our people. We will not surrender our colonies. We will not enslave billions to buy your technology." "The answer is no." Zel-Karath stood silent for a long moment. Then the crystalline being's form pulsed with a cold blue light. "How unfortunate," the Grand Arbiter said. "You will have time to reconsider. We suggest you choose wisely." The alien delegations left Earth within hours, their ships rising into the sky like silver birds fleeing a storm 2 days later. Every screen on Earth activated simultaneously. The broadcast began with no warning, no explanation, just an overhead view of New Terra from orbit. The planet looked beautiful with its blue oceans and green continents. Cities sparkled like jewels in the darkness. And millions of ships moved through orbital traffic patterns that took decades to establish. Then the Imperial fleet appeared. 500 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Each vessel stretched a kilometer long and bristled with weapons that humanity had no names for. "People of Earth." Zel-Karath's voice echoed across every speaker on the planet. "Witness the cost of defiance. Witness what happens when lesser species forget their place. Witness harmony." The bombardment began. Humanity watched as lances of purple energy stabbed down from orbit. Each beam struck a city and erased it in a flash of white light that left nothing but molten glass. New Shanghai vanished first, then New London, New Cairo, New Tokyo. One after another, the great cities of humanity's first and greatest. Colony world died, but the Empire didn't stop there. They showed everything. Cameras mounted on Imperial ships broadcast every detail in perfect clarity. People running through streets as buildings collapsed around them. Evacuation ships rising from spaceports only to be shot down by Imperial fighters. Parents clutching children as the heat wave approached. The screams of 10 billion people dying filled Earth speakers. They made humanity watch for 6 hours. Families gathered around screens, unable to look away as their loved ones burned. World leaders sat in war rooms watching their colony die and knowing there was nothing they could do. Children saw their parents weep for the first time. And parents held their children knowing they might be next. The Great Barrier Ocean was the last to die. Billions of tons of water boiled away in minutes as Imperial weapons turned the ocean floor to lava. The steam cloud was visible from space for hours afterward when it was over. When New Terra was nothing but a cooling ball of cracked stone and ash. Zelkareth appeared on every screen. "This is the price of saying no," the Grand Arbiter announced. "Earth has one standard week to surrender unconditionally. You will transfer control of your remaining 11 colonies to the Harmonium. You will submit to our authority. You will learn your place in the Galactic Order. Or what happened to New Terra will happen to Earth." The transmission ended for several minutes. Humanity sat in absolute silence. Then the weeping began. Memorial services started within hours. Every major city held vigils for the dead. 10 billion candles were lit across Earth as people mourned the single greatest loss in human history. But something else was happening too in Beijing. Military leaders were already analyzing every frame of the broadcast, identifying Imperial ship designs, weapon systems, and tactical patterns in London. Factories that made consumer goods received new blueprints for weapons production in New York. The United Nations dissolved and reformed as the Unified Earth Command within 6 hours in Moscow. Scientists who had spent their careers on peaceful research began designing weapons in Mumbai. Hackers started probing Imperial communication networks in Sao Paulo. Every shipyard retooled to produce warships all across Earth. Humanity did what it had always done when faced with extinction. They adapted, they prepared. And they got angry. Ambassador Chun stood before what remained of the United Nations. Now transformed into a war council. "They think we'll surrender," she said. "They think fear will make us bow. They don't understand humans at all." General Morrison, commander of Earth's combined military forces, nodded grimly. "We have 1 week," he said. 1 week to build everything we can. 1 week to prepare for war. 1 week to show the galaxy what happens when you make humanity angry. Then let's not waste it. Chun replied the vote was unanimous. Earth's response to the ultimatum was prepared carefully and transmitted across all known space. Exactly 1 week after New Terra died, the message was simple. Just one word that would echo through galactic history: no. The first thing that changed was the silence. Earth had always been a noisy planet with billions of voices talking, laughing, arguing, and singing at once. But in the 72 hours after the transmission of that single word, a strange quiet fell over humanity. It wasn't the silence of fear or surrender. It was the silence of people who had stopped talking and started working in Detroit. Automobile factories that had built cars for 150 years retooled their assembly lines overnight. Robotic arms that once welded car frames now assembled missile housings. Paint booths became clean rooms for electronics. And parking lots filled with components for weapon systems instead of family vehicles. Sarah Chen worked the night shift at what used to be called the Ford manufacturing plant. 3 days ago, she had been installing seats in electric cars. Now she was calibrating guidance systems for relativistic kill missiles. "My daughter died on New Terra," she told the new worker beside her. She was 7 years old and loved dancing. "The Empire burned her alive on camera, so now I build missiles. And I'll build them until either the Empire is gone or I am." Her story was the same across Earth and Sol. Video game developers repurposed their game engines to create combat simulations. Within 48 hours, they had produced training programs that could teach a civilian basic ship combat in 6 hours instead of 6 months in Tel Aviv. Cybersecurity firms that spent decades protecting corporate networks turned their expertise toward breaking imperial encryption. Teams of hackers who had never met in person coordinated attacks on alien systems with the precision of a military operation in Lagos. Chemical engineers who designed medicines retooled their knowledge to create biological weapons. They felt sick doing it, but they did it anyway, because someone who designs weapons to save lives can also design weapons to end them. Unified Earth Command operated from a bunker in Geneva that had been built during the last World War and forgotten for decades. Now it hummed with activity as military leaders from every nation worked side by side. General Morrison stood before a holographic display showing Earth's military assets. The numbers were not encouraging. "We have 300 military vessels," he said. "The Empire sent 500 to destroy New Terra. Intelligence suggests they can mobilize 10 times that if they want to make a point about Earth." Admiral Kowalski from the European Space Defense Force shook her head. "We can't match them ship for ship," she said. "Their vessels are larger, better armed, and have superior technology. A straight fight is suicide." "Then we don't fight straight," Morrison replied. "We have something they don't. We have 8 billion very angry humans who just watched their friends and family get murdered on live television." He pulled up new schematics. "Every cargo hauler in Earth's merchant fleet is being retrofitted," he continued. "We're welding missile pods to civilian ships, putting antimatter warheads in ore carriers, turning luxury liners into drone platforms if it can fly and hold a weapon. We're using it. That's a war crime," someone objected. "Using civilian vessels in combat violates every treaty we've ever signed." Morrison's expression went cold. "The Empire broadcasted the murder of 10 billion civilians as entertainment," he said. "I don't think they care much about our treaties. And neither do I anymore." The room went silent. "How many ships can we field?" asked General Liu from the Asian Defense Coalition. 47,000, Morrison answered. "They're not all warships. Most are barely armed cargo vessels with volunteer crews. But they'll fly and they'll fight. 47,000 suicide missions." Liu said quietly. "No," Morrison corrected. 47,000 people who understand that this is humanity's survival. Every person who volunteers knows the odds. They're going anyway. In laboratories across Earth, scientists worked on projects that would have horrified them a week ago. Dr. Sarah Martinez led a team at CERN working on quantum entanglement weapons. The theory was simple enough. Create pairs of entangled particles. Put one set in a missile. Keep the other set in a transmitter when the missile reached its target. Destabilize the transmitter and both sets of particles would annihilate each other regardless of distance. "This could blow up in our faces," her assistant warned. "We're talking about ripping holes in space-time." "Good," Martinez replied. "I hope it tears their ships apart." She had lost her husband on New Terrain, Arizona. A team of engineers excavated weapons prototypes that had been buried and sealed away decades ago for being too dangerous. Project Sundrop had been designed during the last World War as a stellar manipulation device. It could theoretically destabilize a star and cause it to nova. "We buried this for a reason," the chief engineer said. "Using it would make us monsters." "They already made us monsters," his colleague replied. "They just don't know it yet." The psychological transformation of humanity happened faster than anyone expected. News networks that used to debate politics now showed only two things: memorial services for the dead and updates on the war effort. Pacifist organizations that had opposed military spending for generations donated their resources to weapons production. Religious leaders who preached peace blessed the weapons being built. Children too young to fight collected scrap metal for recycling into ships. Even Earth's criminal organizations got involved. The Yakuza in Japan offered their smuggling networks for intelligence gathering. The Bratva in Russia provided access to black market weapons technology. Cartels in South America volunteered their pilots who were used to flying under the radar. We're all humans first. One cartel leader said, "We can go back to hating each other after the empire is dead." On the moon, factories that mined helium-3 for fusion reactors converted to producing antimatter. The process was hideously expensive and dangerous, but nobody cared about cost anymore. "We're producing enough antimatter to crack a planet," the facility director reported. "If we can get it to the target, we'll get it there," Morrison promised in Earth's orbit. Construction crews worked around the clock building ships. They used every trick humanity had learned in 2 centuries of space construction, plus a few new ones inspired by desperation ship. Hulls were thinner than safety regulations allowed. Life support systems were stripped to minimum functionality, and armor was replaced with more weapons. The ships being built would barely survive a single engagement, but they didn't need to survive. They just needed to hurt the enemy before dying. Volunteers lined up in every major city. The military had to turn people away because there weren't enough ships being built fast enough. "I want to fight," a grandmother told the recruiter. "My grandchildren died on New Terra. I have nothing left to lose, and the Empire has everything to pay." They took her. She became a pilot on a converted mining ship. Analysis teams worked 24 hours a day, studying the broadcast footage of New Terra's destruction. They cataloged every Imperial ship type, every weapon system, every tactical formation. "They fight like they expect to win," a tactical analyst noted. "Their formations are efficient but predictable. They rely heavily on AI targeting, and they've never faced an enemy willing to ram them. Then we'll give them something they've never seen," Morrison said in the final hours before the deadline expired. Earth completed its preparations. 47,000 ships of every size and description floated in formations around Earth and Luna. Some were proper warships bristling with railguns and missile pods. Others were cargo haulers with weapons welded to their hulls. A few were yachts owned by billionaires who volunteered their toys for war. Each ship had a volunteer crew. Some crews were military professionals with decades of training. Others were civilians who learned to fly in the past 72 hours. All of them understood the odds, and all of them were going anyways. General Morrison broadcast a message to the fleet. "The Empire thinks we'll break," he said. "They think fear is stronger than love. They think we'll surrender to save ourselves. They're wrong. We're not fighting because we love war. We're fighting because we love each other. Every person who died on New Terra was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. They were us. And we do not abandon our own." He paused. "The Empire wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy," Morrison continued. "Today we teach them something about humanity. We teach them that you can kill us. You can burn our worlds. You can broadcast our deaths across the stars, but you cannot make us bow. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you hurt humans. Today we show them our fury." The cheering from 47,000 ships echoed across every communication channel. Earth waited for the Empire's response. They didn't have to wait long. The Imperial fleet arrived exactly when their ultimatum expired, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect military formation at the edge of Earth's solar system. 500 warships, each one a kilometer of advanced technology and destructive power, arranged themselves in attack patterns that had conquered 1,000 worlds over 10,000 years. Grand Arbiters El-Karath stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Harmony and gazed at the primitive planet ahead. They refused to surrender, the tactical officer reported. Scans show approximately 47,000 vessels in defensive positions around the third planet. Zelkareth's crystalline form shimmered with amusement. 47,000, the Grand Arbiter repeated. Desperation makes them foolish. What are these vessels? The scans are confusing, the officer admitted. Approximately 300 appear to be military warships. The rest are civilian craft of various types. Cargo haulers, mining vessels, passenger transports. Some appear to be private yachts. They send cargo ships against the Harmonium, Zelkareth said. Perhaps we should be merciful and accept their surrender before they embarrass themselves. They are not requesting permission to surrender, the communications officer interjected. They are broadcasting a message. It consists of one word repeated across all frequencies. What word? Come. Zelkareth's amusement faded. Very well, the Grand Arbiter said. Advance the fleet. Destroy half their vessels as a demonstration. Then they will surrender. The Imperial fleet moved forward in textbook formation. Capital ships in the center. Destroyers on the flanks, fighters screening ahead. They had used these tactics for millennia because these tactics always worked. The human fleet didn't advance to meet them. Instead, it scattered 47,000 ships, broke formation simultaneously, and accelerated in every direction like a school of fish evading a predator. Some burned toward the Imperial fleet at maximum velocity. Others curved around the flanks. Still more dove below the plane of engagement chaos. The tactical officer reported, they have no formation, no coordination, no discipline. Easy prey, Zelkareth replied. Target the largest vessels first. Show them the futility of resistance. The Imperial weapons fired purple. Lances of energy reached across the darkness and struck human ships. A cargo hauler exploded as its reactor overloaded. A destroyer vaporized under sustained bombardment. A mining vessel split in half, trailing debris and bodies. The humans didn't slow down instead. They accelerated. The first wave hit the Imperial fleet like a tidal wave of metal and fury. 300 cargo haulers, loaded with antimatter, didn't fire weapons or attempt evasive maneuvers. They simply flew straight at Imperial ships at maximum speed. They're ramming us, the tactical officer shouted. They're actually ramming us. Impossible, Zelkareth said. No species would waste ships in such a manner, but they were bulk freighter that used to carry grain between Mars and Europa slammed into an Imperial destroyer at 0.2 light speed. The antimatter in its hold detonated and both ships vanished in a flash that temporarily blinded sensors across the battlefield. Luxury yacht owned by a Chinese billionaire crashed into the Eternal Harmony shields. The shields held, but the yacht's crew detonated their cargo of stolen Imperial munitions at point-blank range. The explosion carved a chunk out of the flagship's hull. Mining ship loaded with ore accelerated to 0.3 light speed and hit an Imperial cruiser amidships. The kinetic energy alone was enough to break the larger ship in half. This is insane, the tactical officer reported. They're using their ships as missiles. Then shoot them down. Zelkareth ordered the Imperial fleet tripoint, defense systems that could track and destroy. Thousands of incoming missiles struggled against targets that moved erratically, changed course constantly, and actively tried to get hit. Human pilots with nothing to lose flew like madmen, spinning and weaving through defensive fire. Some made it through a converted passenger liner designated Hope's Revenge crashed into the port side of an Imperial battleship. Its antimatter warhead created a temporary new sun in Earth's solar system. The Imperial fleet's neat formation collapsed into chaos. Human vessels were everywhere now, diving in from every angle, firing missiles from cargo base, deploying drone swarms from passenger compartments. Some ships weren't even armed, but simply flew at Imperial vessels to distract point defenses, while armed ships attacked from different vectors. Status report, Zelkareth demanded. We've destroyed 11,000 enemy vessels, the the tactical officer said. "But we've lost 47 ships. Another 100 are damaged. 47 losses against 11,000, Zelkareth said. "That is acceptable." "No, sir," the officer corrected. "They have 36,000 ships remaining. At this rate of attrition, they will destroy us before we destroy them." Zelkareth finally understood. These primitives weren't trying to win through superior tactics or technology. They were simply willing to die faster than the Empire could kill them. They were trading 10 ships for every Imperial vessel and considering it a bargain. This is not how civilized species fight. The Grand Arbiter say human transmission cut through the chaos. General Morrison's face appeared on every Imperial ship's communication screen. "You're right," Morrison said. "Civilized species don't fight like this. But you burned that out of us when you killed New Terra. You wanted to teach us a lesson about power. Congratulations, we learned. We learned that power isn't about having the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons. Power is about being willing to pay any price to hurt the things that hurt you." Another wave of human ships slammed into the Imperial formation. "We're not trying to win," Morrison continued. "We're trying to make you bleed. We're trying to show every species in the galaxy that the mighty celestial harmonium can be hurt, that you can be killed, that you're not invincible gods, but just bullies who never got punched back." He smiled. "So here's humanity punching back. 300 human warships that have been holding back suddenly accelerated. These weren't converted cargo haulers or civilian vessels. These were purpose-built military ships crewed by professional soldiers who had trained for combat. Their entire lives they hit the Imperial fleet like a scalpel after the hammer railgun rounds, traveling at significant fractions of light speed punched through Imperial shields and armor. Human missiles used the chaos of the ongoing ramming attacks to slip through defensive fire. And electronic warfare systems that have been analyzing Imperial networks for the past week unleashed viruses into enemy computer systems. Imperial battleships' AI suddenly paused for 3 seconds before firing. 3 seconds during which a human destroyer put 5 antimatter warheads into its exposed reactor core. Another Imperial ship's point defenses simply stopped working as human hackers took control. A swarm of human drones exploited the gap and reduced the vessel to scrap. The tide turned. "Retreat," Zelkareth ordered. "Full retreat to jump distance." The Imperial fleet tried to disengage, but the human vessels pursued like wolves chasing wounded prey. Ships that were already damaged and knew they wouldn't make it back to Earth anyway used their last fuel to catch fleeing Imperial vessels. A destroyer with a cracked hull and failing life support caught an Imperial cruiser trying to reach jump distance. The human captain rammed his ship into the enemy's engines and detonated. Everything on board, both ships died, but the cruiser died first when the Imperial fleet finally jumped away. They left behind 487 burning wrecks. The human fleet had lost 31,000 ships. Earth considered it the greatest victory in human history, General Morrison broadcast. Across all human channels, the Empire wanted to demonstrate their power, he said. Instead, they demonstrated their weakness. They can be hurt, they can bleed, they can die. And we are very good at making things die. He paused. "This was just the beginning," Morrison continued. "The Empire thinks we'll celebrate this victory and wait for them to come back. They're wrong again. We're not defending anymore. Starting today, humanity goes on the offensive in Earth's orbit." The 16,000 surviving ships began to rearm and refuel. They weren't preparing for defense. They were preparing to hunting shipyards across Earth and Luna. New vessels were already under construction. Humanity had learned from the battle and adapted. The next generation of ships would be faster, deadlier, and built specifically for the kind of warfare that horrified civilized species within a week. The first human raiding fleets departed for Imperial space. They carried with them every terrible weapon humanity had designed. Every brutal tactic they had learned, and every ounce of rage from 10 billion dead. The Empire had sown the wind now, they would reap the whirlwind. The first Imperial colony to fall was Theta Carini III, a mining world with a population of 2 million Korthax working in automated facilities that extracted rare metals from the planet's crust. The Korthax were a peaceful species that had joined the Harmonium 3,000 years ago. They lived quiet lives operating machinery and shipping minerals to Imperial worlds. They had no military, no weapons, and no reason to expect attack. Human ships appeared without warning. 6 destroyers and 40 converted cargo vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel in orbit. The Korthax station master tried to hail them but received only static. Then the human weapons fired, but they didn't target the Korthax habitats or civilian infrastructure. The human missiles streaked past the population centers and slammed into Imperial military installations, the small garrison of Imperial troops, the surveillance stations, and the orbital platforms that enforced Imperial control within 2 hours. Every Imperial military asset on Theta Carini III was destroyed. Then the human ships broadcasted a message. "People of Theta Carini," Admiral Sarah Chun said, "Earth has no quarrel with you. We are not here to conquer or enslave. We are here to free you from the empire that uses you. Any Imperial personnel who wish to surrender will be treated according to human rules of war. Any who resist will die. You have 1 hour to decide." The Korthax didn't resist. They had watched the footage from New Terra like every species in the galaxy. They knew what humans did to enemies, but they also noticed what the humans hadn't done. Hadn't bombed their cities, hadn't killed civilians, hadn't even damaged their mining infrastructure. Why? The station master asked when Chun came aboard their central habitat. "Because you didn't kill our people." Chun replied simply, "The Empire did. You're just workers trying to survive. We understand that." She pulled up a holographic display showing the battle at Earth. "But the Empire needs to understand something else," Chun continued. "They need to know that humans don't make war on innocent people. We make war on the guilty. Every species in the galaxy needs to see the difference." Before leaving, the human fleet disabled the Imperial communications relay and left behind a data package containing the complete footage of New Terra's massacre, along with a message. "The Celestial Harmonium did this," the message stated. "They murdered 10 billion humans as entertainment. They broadcasted it as a demonstration of power. Ask yourselves if this is the empire you want to serve. Ask yourselves what happens when your usefulness ends." The pattern repeated across Imperial space human fleets struck at military targets with surgical precision while leaving civilian populations untouched. They destroyed Imperial garrisons, communication networks, supply depots, and shipyards, but they didn't massacre populations or burn worlds. The galaxy noticed on Vector Prime, a heavily industrialized world that produced weapons for the Imperial fleet. Human commandos infiltrated the main manufacturing complex. They didn't sabotage the production lines or destroy the facilities. Instead, they uploaded a virus into the factory computers that changed the weapon specifications just enough to make them unreliable. Missiles that would detonate prematurely, energy weapons that would overheat and explode, shield generators that would fail under stress. The weapons looked perfect and tested perfectly in standard Imperial quality control. But in actual combat, they killed their users. The Empire distributed 30,000 faulty weapons before they discovered the sabotage in the Triangulum sector. Human forces began using biological warfare, but not the kind anyone expected. Human scientists had studied the diverse species of the Harmonium and created targeted biological agents. Not to kill, but to incapacitate. The Velkrans suddenly found themselves suffering from a plague that caused temporary blindness. The Zelanari, experienced a condition that made their crystalline bodies opaque and unable to perceive light. The Korthax dealt with a virus that disrupted their electrical. Since none of these conditions were fatal, all of them made military service impossible. Thousands of Imperial soldiers found themselves medically discharged and sent home, where they told their families about the humans who could have killed them but chose mercy instead. The Empire's propaganda called it weakness. The soldiers knew better on the mining colony of New Breccia. Human psychological warfare reached its peak. The Imperial garrison there had participated in the New Terra massacre. Human intelligence had identified every ship, every crew member, every officer who had been present. The humans didn't attack immediately. First, they broadcasted the names every morning at exactly the same time. Human transmissions would list the names of the New Terra massacre participants currently stationed on New Breccia. They would name them, show their faces, and list their specific crimes. Commander Thelkor of the destroyer Righteous Purpose fired on evacuation ships carrying children. The broadcast would state 3,412 children died. The broadcasts included footage from New Terra matched to specific Imperial weapon signatures. The psychological impact was devastating. The garrison troops couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't function. They knew the humans were coming, but not when. They knew the humans knew exactly who they were and what they had done when the human attack finally came. Half the garrison surrendered immediately. The other half fought and died. The humans took no prisoners among those who resisted, but treated those who surrendered with correct military courtesy. They were documented, their crimes recorded, and transported to a neutral world to await trial. The galaxy watched this too, in the Andromeda Relay Station, a critical communications hub that connected a dozen Imperial sectors. Humans demonstrated their capacity for creative destruction. They didn't attack the station. Instead, they hacked into its systems and began broadcasting every communication that passed through the relay. Suddenly, the entire galaxy could read Imperial military orders, diplomatic cables, and private communications between Imperial leadership. The revelations were explosive. The galaxy learned that New Terra wasn't destroyed for strategic reasons, or even as a punishment for defiance. Internal Imperial communications showed that Grand Arbiter Zelkareth had ordered the massacre as entertainment for a gathering of Imperial nobility who made wagers on casualty counts and creative methods of destruction. I bet 10,000 credits that the Eastern Continent breaks 1 billion casualties, one noble had written. Only if they panic properly, another replied. The Western Continent has more urban density. That's where the real numbers are. They had gambled on human lives. Like it was a sporting event, the broadcasts continued for 3 days before the Empire shut down the relay. By then, the damage was done. Species across the Harmonium were questioning their loyalty. Protests erupted on a dozen worlds, and 3 species formally requested to leave the Harmonium. The Empire refused their requests. That was a mistake. The Sindari were a telepathic species who had joined the Harmonium 2,000 years ago. They were peaceful philosophers who contributed art and culture to the Empire. When they requested to leave and were refused, they simply stopped cooperating. Every Sindarian Imperial service went on strike simultaneously. The Empire sent troops to force them back to work. The humans intervened. A human fleet appeared over Sindara and broadcasted a simple message to the Imperial forces. These people want to leave. Admiral Morrison stated, "You're going to let them." The Imperial commander demanded reinforcements. None came because human raiders were hitting supply lines across 3 sectors after 2 weeks. The Imperial forces withdrew. The Sindari became the first species to successfully leave the Harmonium. They immediately signed a mutual defense pact with Earth. 2 more species followed within a month. The Empire's response was brutal. They launched a massive counteroffensive, sending their best fleets and most experienced commanders to crush the human insurgency. Battle of Kepler Station became the Empire's Stalingrad. Station was a massive orbital facility that served as a repair yard and resupply point for the Imperial fleet. The Empire sent 3,000 warships to retake it from the human forces that had captured it 2 weeks earlier. The humans had 500 ships, but they had been preparing. The station itself had been booby-trapped with every nasty surprise human engineers could devise. When the Imperial fleet entered weapons range, the station's outer sections simply exploded. Thousands of tons of debris and shrapnel slammed into the approaching Imperial ships. The human fleet attacked from behind, catching the Imperial forces between the station's wreckage and their weapons. The Empire lost 2,100 ships. The humans lost 370. But more importantly, the Empire lost its certainty. They had always believed in their technological superiority, their ancient military traditions, their inherent right to rule. The humans showed them that technology meant nothing against determination, that traditions became weaknesses when facing adaptive enemies, and that rights only existed as far as power enforced them, and humanity was very good at projecting power. 6 months after the Battle of Earth's orbit, human forces controlled or had destroyed 52 Imperial military installations, liberated 14 species from forced service, and killed approximately 500,000 Imperial military personnel. The Empire had killed another 100,000 humans, but the humans kept coming. 18 months after New Terra burned, humanity stood at the gates of Celesta Prime. The Imperial throne world hung in space like a jewel. 20 billion inhabitants living on a planet that had never known war, protected by the most powerful defenses in the known galaxy. 3,000 warships formed the outer defensive sphere. Another 5,000 waited in reserve. Orbital fortresses bristled with weapons that could crack planets, and automated defense platforms numbered in the tens of thousands. It was the most heavily defended location in galactic history. Humanity brought everything they had. 4 fleets totaling 8,000 ships approached from 4 different vectors. These weren't the converted cargo haulers and desperate civilian vessels that fought at Earth. These were purpose-built warships incorporating captured Imperial technology combined with human innovation and Rage Admiral Morrison commanded the assault from the bridge of the Earth defense ship Remembrance. The flagship's hull was painted with the names of every person who died on New Terra. 10 billion names in microscopic text covering every surface. All ships report ready. His tactical officer announced. Morrison looked at the holographic display showing the incredible defenses ahead. Any rational commander would call this suicide. But rationality died with New Terra. The Empire thinks these defenses make them safe, Morrison said. They're about to learn that walls just make the grave smaller. He opened a channel to all ships. 80 months ago, the Empire murdered 10 billion of our friends. Our family, our children, Morrison began. They did it slowly, they did it publicly, and they did it for fun. Today, we show them what happens when you hurt humanity. Today, we show them that no defense is strong enough, no fortress high enough, no army large enough to protect them from us. He paused. For New Terra, Morrison said quietly. For New Terra. 8,000 ships roared back. The assault began. Human ships didn't approach in neat formations or follow predictable attack patterns. They came in like a swarm of angry hornets, splitting into 1,000 small groups that attacked from every possible angle. The Imperial defenses opened fire, and space itself seemed to burn purple. Energy lances crossed the darkness in infinite lines. Missiles filled the void like a metal rain. Point defense systems created a solid wall of fire that nothing should have survived. The human ships came through anyway. They lost hundreds in the first minute, thousands in the first 5 minutes. But those who survived struck at the Imperial formations with weapons the Empire had never imagined. Quantum entanglement bombs detonated inside Imperial ships, regardless of shields or armor. Nanite swarms ate through hull plating like acid, and relativistic kill missiles moving at 0.9 light speed simply erased whatever they hit an entire Imperial battle group vanished when a human science vessel detonated an experimental stellar compression device. The weapon created a temporary gravity while so intense that ships thousands of kilometers away were crushed into atomic paste. "This is madness," the Imperial Fleet Commander transmitted. "You're killing yourselves. We know," a human pilot responded before ramming his crippled destroyer into an orbital fortress. The human hackers struck next during 18 months of warfare. Human intelligence services had infiltrated every Imperial network they could reach. They studied Imperial AI systems, learned their decision trees, understood their limitations. Now they activated the virus across the Imperial defensive fleet. AI targeting systems paused for 3 seconds before firing in space combat. 3 seconds was an eternity. Human missiles exploited the gap, slipping through defenses during that brief hesitation. 500 Imperial ships died in the first wave because their computers took 3 seconds too long to shoot. The Imperial defenses began to crack human marine assault ships, vessels designed to carry troops through the worst fire imaginable, punched through the thinning defensive lines. These weren't soldiers coming for conquest. They were survivors from New Terra's evacuation fleet. People who had watched their world burn from orbit. People who had lost everything except rage. They boarded Imperial orbital fortresses and showed no mercy. The fighting inside was brutal and short. The humans used tactics learned from 200 years of urban warfare on Earth combined with weapons designed for close-quarter ship combat. Imperial defenders surrendered by the thousands. The human survivors from New Terra took prisoners, but their eyes promised that surrender was just the beginning of judgment. Within 6 hours, the orbital defenses fell. The Imperial Fleet Commander opened a communication channel. "We surrender," he transmitted. "In accordance with galactic conventions of warfare, we request terms." Morrison appeared on his screen. "The galactic conventions died when you burned New Terra," the Admiral said. "You want terms? Here are your terms. Every ship that participated in the New Terra massacre will be destroyed. Every commander will face trial. Everyone else gets to live and go home. You have 10 minutes to identify which ships were at New Terra." The Imperial commander hesitated. Morrison didn't. A human weapons platform fired a single shot that vaporized the flagship. 9 minutes. Morrison announced to the remaining fleet. The identifications came through. In 847 Imperial ships had participated in New Terra's destruction. They tried to run, but human ships were waiting at every escape vector. None of them made it out. The human fleets landed on Celesta Prime with one objective. Grand Arbiter Zelkareth, crystalline being, sat in the Imperial Palace surrounded by the last guards, waiting as human soldiers fought their way through ornate halls decorated with art from 1,000 conquered worlds. When the humans finally breached the throne room, Zelkareth expected to die instead. They offered a choice. "You can stand trial before a galactic tribunal," General Chun said, "or you can face justice by human custom." Zelkareth's crystalline form pulsed with the color of curiosity. "What is human custom?" "Trial by experience," Chun replied. "You experience what your victims experienced." Zelkareth considered the options. A galactic tribunal meant endless legal proceedings, imprisonment, and eventual execution. Human custom sounded simpler. "I choose human custom." Chun smiled without warmth. They placed Zelkareth in a simulation chamber for 6 hours. The Grand Arbiter experienced New Terra's final day. The simulation used the eye reconstructions of actual victims, 10,000 of them, and placed Zelkareth among them as the world burned. the Grand Arbiter felt the heat of approaching orbital strikes, heard the screams of children calling for parents who were already dead, experienced the panic of crowds crushing each other in desperate attempts to reach evacuation ships, felt the moment when hope died and acceptance came over and over. 10,000 different perspectives, 10,000 different deaths, compressed into 6 hours of continuous horror when it ended. Zelkarath's crystalline form had lost its luster. Cracks ran through the being's structure, and the colors that once shimmered with pride now pulsed with something the Grand Arbiter had never felt before. Guilt. "Why?" Zelkarath whispered. "Why didn't you just kill me?" Chun looked at the broken being with cold eyes. "Because we wanted you to understand," she said. "We wanted you to feel what they felt. We wanted you to know exactly what you did. Killing you would have been mercy. Understanding is justice." The broadcast went across the galaxy. Every species saw the Grand Arbiter broken and weeping, saw the being who ordered genocide reduced to a shell, saw what happened when you attacked humanity, but they also saw what came next instead of execution, instead of torture, instead of revenge. The humans placed Zelkarath in custody to stand trial. "We wanted to kill you," Chun told the Grand Arbiter in front of the galaxy. "We wanted to burn your worlds like you burned ours. We wanted to make you suffer until suffering itself begged us to stop." She paused. "But we won't," Chun continued. "Because becoming you would mean you won. You'll stand trial. You'll face justice. You'll spend whatever life you have left knowing what you did and knowing that we chose mercy when you chose massacre." The difference was not lost on the watching galaxy. Within days, the celestial harmonium collapsed. Species that had served the Empire for thousands of years formally withdrew. Some joined humanity's coalition, others chose independence. None chose to stay with an empire that gambled on genocide for entertainment. The few species that remained loyal to the Empire found themselves isolated and outnumbered. Humanity offered them terms: surrender all military assets, submit to war crimes tribunals, and join the new galactic coalition based on consent rather than conquest. Most accepted those who didn't, found themselves fighting the combined forces of a dozen species who had learned from humanity that bullies can be beaten. The war ended, not with a bang, but with bureaucracy, surrender documents, trials, and the slow work of building something new. Humanity established a memorial on New Terra. The planet remained exactly as the Empire left it. A burned dead rock with the scars of orbital bombardment still visible from space. Every species joining the coalition had to visit once, had to see the cities reduced to glass, the oceans boiled away, the evidence of 10 billion murders. This is what happens when power becomes cruelty. The memorial inscription read, "Remember the dead, remember the cost, remember that civilization is a